It's not a MorgyyReads video if it's not like a week past when it should have been uploaded. Hi, hey, I'm Morgan, and today I'm going to be talking to you about my favorite books of 2020. The fact that I had a favorite anything in 2020 is just great because I'm taking what I can get from that shit year. 2020 was not a good year, but it was good for reading. I had a pretty good reading year. I read 71 books in the year, not 100. And if you saw me change my Goodreads reading challenge to 70 books when I realized, no you didn't. I am here to talk about my 10 favorite books that I read in 2020. The books that just like made me feel good, that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. I also have some honorable mentions. I am going to just hop right into it. Like I said, I have some honorable mentions here. I have 3 that I want to talk about. These ones weren't quite my favorite, like some other books beat them out, but they definitely still deserve some recognition. But the first one I'm going to mention is On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. This was really great. I honestly like blacked out the first half of this year, so I like was going through my Goodreads and I was like, did I read that this year? Why did this year last so long? This is about a girl named Bree who is an aspiring rapper, and she gets thrown into a tumultuous situation that ends up in one of her songs going viral, and it talks a lot about microaggressions that she faces as a black woman, and this takes place in the same setting as The Hate U Give. This was great, and it tackled wonderful subjects like talking about how black people can be painted by the media in horrible lights, and about microaggressions, especially in the terms of her song going viral and then everyone painting her to be some like thuggish person and a violent person and someone who isn't one to be like trusted or taken seriously. And I thought that commentary was really, I don't want to say jarring because I feel like there's a connotation to that, but I found it like it is jarring when you see something so heavily misconstrued, and it's just ugh, ew, because she writes this song about her dealing with an aggressive act from an officer that was working at her school, and so there's talk of like police brutality. It's so good and it was so necessary and I loved it, and I can't wait to read more by Angie Thomas. This one was great. Read it. The next honorable mention I want to talk about is My Year of It's My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh. Kat from Paperback Dreams talked about this in one of her videos, and she said that it was really tender and interesting, and I read it, and yeah, tender is definitely really a great way to describe this book. It's about a woman who lives in New York, and she's just gone through it. Her parents have passed away, and she has gone through like relationship struggles and strife, and she decides that she wants to start anew, and she thinks that the best way to do that is to take a year off and to sleep for a year. So she goes to like this horrible psychiatrist who continually like pumps her full of sleep medication, and it's about like the delirium she faces in that, and just her thinking that if she just sleeps for a year, she'll wake up at the end of that year feeling refreshed and feel renewed and rejuvenated and ready to continue living her life. It's really short. I read it in like a day or two. It was really great. I really recommend this one. It was soft and gentle and kind to the character as well as to the reader, and I think that's hard to find in books, especially like literary fiction. This one, like, I really needed after my come down from A Little Life, and it was really great, and I highly recommend it. Next, I have We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix. I ended up reading 2 Grady Hendrix books this year. I read this one and then his new release, The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. But of the 2, I think I liked this one more. It was about a girl named Chris, and she was in a metal band. Called Dirt Work. And for unforeseen reasons the band broke up and split up, but the rest of the band went on to have like pretty mundane lives and not have any sort of musical career except for their singer, and they found out that something sinister is going on with their souls involved. So Chris decides to get the band back together and face this evil, and it was so gripping. I think I read this in like a day and a half. I literally could not stop reading it. I ended up giving it a like 4.75 stars on Goodreads. Like, it was so close to being 5 stars, but I personally have an issue with the way that Grady Hendrix wraps his books up. I think that his exposition is wonderful and his character development is great, and the way they fight the big bads in all of his books are wonderful, but I just feel like he finishes it and then he doesn't know how to finish it, you know? I just think that his endings could be a little stronger, but I loved this book and I love Grady Hendrix. He's one of my favorite authors. Just the endings are kind of rough for me because I want a book to end in a way that feels like that makes sense, is happy, isn't too open-ended, but also isn't tied up in like a pretty little bow, you know what I mean? And like I'm very picky about my endings. I feel bad not giving this one 5 stars, but also like it's still an honorable mention of one of my favorite books of the year, but didn't make the top 10. So now is the time that we're gonna get into my top 10 books. So all of these books got 5 stars. I don't have all of them here because some of them I listened to on audiobook through my library, so I'm going to talk about those ones first. So the first book I'm going to talk about is The Right Swipe by Alicia. This is a romance book. I have 2 romance books on this list, and who am I? Who the fuck am I? I read so much romance in 2020 and now I am a changed woman. The Right Swipe is about a girl named Rhiannon, and she is the creator and CEO of a dating app called Crush. It's very similar to like Bumble, and she goes to this conference because she wants to buy out a competitive app called Matchmaker, and there she sees a guy named Samson, who is a spokesperson for Matchmaker, and it was someone that she met and hooked up with via her app, and then he ghosted her afterwards, and come to find out he is the nephew of her rival competitor like app or like website's nephew, like the CEO, the nephew of the CEO. She's like, holy shit, like I could probably get back in his good graces and then buy the app, and then she gets in way more than his good graces. She gets in his pants, bitch. And it was so sweet and so good. There was a sequel to this called Girl Gone Viral is what the sequel was called, and I liked the first one a little bit better because there was a little bit more tension and a little bit more like enemies to lovers, and it was steamy, it was sexy, it was so sweet, and I like cried. It was great. It was so good. I really liked this one, and there's like anxiety and mental illness rep, and the second book has PTSD rep, and it was just wonderful. I really liked this book. The next one I'm going to talk about was also an audiobook and was also a romance, and that is going to be The Bromance Book Club by Lyssa K. Adams. Holy shit, I am on the 3rd book in the series right now. I'm listening to it on audiobook. I really like listening to romance on audiobooks, I found out. Maybe it's because like reading like smut scenes with my eyes gets me a little more flustered. Because when I'm listening to it while I'm like cross-stitching or something, I can just be like, oh, hot. But if I'm like reading it and I see the things, I'll have to step away. This is about our main character Gavin and his wife Thea, and their relationship is a little tense. They've been married and he's a professional baseball player, and he finds out that his wife had been faking it in bed, if you know what I mean. The relationship is kind of on the rocks, and they decide that they are going to get a divorce, but he is still in love with her and wants to make the relationship work, so he is inundated into a book club with other fellas who read Regency and other types of romance novels to mend their relationships and to understand women better and their needs and wants. And like, I love these men. It was so funny and sexy and raw and genuine. And book 2 had an enemies to lovers situation. I think book 3 is like an unrequited like friends to lovers type of shit. And it's just, it's just precious and it makes me smile the whole time I read it, and just like, I just want to read some happy books. Like, all I read last year was A Little Life and it ruined me, and I just want to smile. I just want to read books that make me fucking happy. The next one we'll be talking about is another audiobook, not a romance, but it is In the Dream House by Carmen Machado. I read both of their books this year, Her Body and Other Parties, as well as In the Dream House, and this is a memoir told through vignettes and also like really metaphorical about an abusive relationship, and it's all told through the lens of like being in the dream house. It's so good, and I want to get a physical copy of it really badly so I can physically read it and be gripped all over again. The audiobook is narrated by the author, and it was chilling and heartbreaking and heart-wrenching, and it was just, I cannot stop thinking about this book. It's so good. So good. Oh my god, I cannot believe this book. It was great. It was great. I highly recommend it. Obviously trigger warnings for domestic abuse and abusive relationships and gaslighting and manipulation and things like that, but if you can handle it, I recommend it. 100%. 100%. Most of these aren't in any sort of order. I just wanted to go through the ones that I don't have physically with me and then go to my physical books, but there is one book that I don't have physically with me right now, but I am going to be talking about, so sorry, it's going to be like a back and forth between holding physical books and pictures of covers. So the next book I'm going to talk about, I don't have my physical copy with me, but I did read it physically, and that is Homie by Danez Smith. This is a poetry collection that talks about blackness and queerness and family and love and loss and grief, and Danez being HIV positive, and it was so good. I read it during the summer and it made me cry. It was phenomenal. I really loved this book. Danez, I've seen their slam poems and spoken words prior to reading their poetry collection, and I definitely want to read Don't Call Us Dead, their other work, ASAP. A fucking sap. I'm so excited. I'm so jazzed. Ugh, I just want to see more black queer joy. A lot of books on my favorites are about black queer joy, and I'm just riveted. I'm just so happy. Next, I want to talk about Come Tumbling Down. This is by Seanan McGuire. This is book 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the Wayward Children trilogy, and it is once again following my two favorite characters in the series, Jack and Jill. I love these two twins so very much, and it more so follows Jack. Jack has very intense obsessive compulsive disorder. If you're new here, hi, hey, I have obsessive compulsive disorder, and the OCD that is described with Jack feels very comparative and very similar to the OCD that I experience and the way that mine resonates, and this book was wonderful. It was great. It was gentle with Jack and also with Jill, and I just love these novellas. I will never not have a Seanan McGuire book in my favorite books of the year or all time. Seanan McGuire has solidified herself time and time again as one of my favorite authors of all time. I don't think I've read anything by her that I haven't given 5 stars. I love these books. They mean so much to me. She announced that like she has like 5 or 6 more books planned for this series. Are you fucking joking? I could read thousands of these, and mayhaps I will. If you haven't read it yet, I just pick it up, just please, just maybe for me, for old time's sake. I'm a simp for Seanan McGuire, let it be known. Sarah from String Bean Books has talked about this so much this year. I don't think you need me to talk about it, but I am going to talk about You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. I originally read this on audiobook and I loved it, and I decided to pick it up physically, and I'm going to reread it physically because I want to. This is about our main character, Liz Lighty, and she comes into a situation where she has an issue with her financial aid and with being accepted to her dream college. Pretty sure it's Princeton. Pennington. Close. Started with P, ended with ton. Common mistake. She lives in like a town that prioritizes prom. It's like rural Indiana, basically. If it's outside of the main city, it's rural. That's how the Midwest works. She finds out that there is a way to get a full ride scholarship if she wins prom queen, and so she signs up for this like coalition to basically try to win prom queen, and it involves doing like a lot of tasks around town and like being competitive against other women. And then she meets a girl named Mac, and they fall in love, and it's queer, and it's like this beautiful black girl, and she's so happy. Look at this cover. How can this cover just not spark joy? Like, I just think about Liz and Mac, and I just want them to be happy. I highly recommend you should see Me in a Crown. I'm gonna reread it this year, I think, because I want to reread books that I enjoyed audibly, physically more, because I really relied on audiobooks last year and I want to read more with my eyes. But I loved this book as an audiobook, and I can't imagine disliking it physically, you know? Written down to the top 4. These ones are gonna be in order from like, you know, my ranking. So from here on out, this is my ranking of my favorite books. Oh man, does that make me nervous or what? Next, I gotta talk about All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. I absolutely love this book. It's a memoir manifesto about George's life being a queer black boy and about experiencing black joy, and like this stipulation that is put on black boys to like not feel happy because it's gay or like not manly. And it talks about gender roles and stereotypes. It was just, oh, it was so beautiful. Jesse from Bow Ties and Books talked about this book, and it just really incited me to want to read it because their passion and their joy for this book is so palpable. And if you have not watched Jesse rant and rave about this book, I highly recommend you do so. This book was beautiful, and it really did something for me. It made me feel so much joy and sadness, and just, it was so powerful and moving, and I loved it. I loved it so very much. I can't wait to read other works by George M. Johnson. I thought about this one for a lot, and I really want to reread it soon and like annotate it to hell. And this cover, are you joking? Oh, just the biggest of chef's kisses. It's so good. It's so good. Right, final 3. Oh man. I'm gonna talk about another poetry collection, and it's A Fortune for Your Disaster by Hanif Abdurraqib. I read both of Hanif's poetry collections this year, this one and The Crown Ain't Worth Much, and I could have easily put both of them on here because they both got 5 stars and they were both favorites of the year. But I figured of the two, I really want to talk about Fortune. This book was so good. My favorite poems are all of them in the series. How Can Black People Talk About Flowers at a Time Like This? If you have the time, I'll post a link in the description of a reading that Hanif did of those poems, and just everyone deserves to hear a poem by Hanif read in his voice because it's so good. I think that Hanif, his poetry transcends like the written word, and I think that hearing them read makes them more powerful, makes them more moving, especially with the way that Hanif delivers his words. I've read now 2 of his poetry collections. I'm currently reading one of his essay collections at the moment, and I think it's safe to say that he is going to become one of my favorite authors of all time. He has a new book coming out in March that I'm super excited about, called A Little Devil in America. I need everyone to read it with me. This talks about grief and love and lost love and anger and like mourning black lives and about black life, and it's so good. There's another poem I really like. Let me find it. All of the ones that are How Can Black People Write About Flowers at a Time Like This, amazing. The Old Head Gives Bad Advice While a Man Sits with a Gun. That one's really good. For the Dogs Who Barked at Me on the Sidewalks in Connecticut. I would ask you to reconsider the idea that things are as bad as they've ever been. That one is so good. I could literally tell you the entire table of contents. I Tend to Think Forgiveness Looks the Way It Does in the Movies is one of my favorite poems of all time. Like, this is definitely one of my favorite, it's my favorite poetry collection of the year, but it's also one of my favorite poetry collections of all time. Like, I will never not recommend this piece. It's important, it's poignant, it's beautiful, it's necessary, it's everything. And that's how I feel about everything that Hanif writes, and it feels like music. Like, it has this flow to it and this cadence, and you want to hear it with your ears. Like, reading it sometimes feels like it doesn't do the piece justice. Like, I just want to hear Hanif's words, you know? So I definitely recommend you guys watch videos of him doing readings from his books, because they're exceptional. And if you take nothing else from my channel, pick up Hanif's work. Could not recommend this more. I truly could not. Yes, I could. I'm gonna scream about it forever. Read it. All right, final two. What do you think they're gonna be? Leave a comment guessing what my final two are gonna be. My second favorite book that I've read in the year 2020 is The Toll by Neal Schusterman. This is the third and final book in the Arc of a Scythe series. This is my favorite trilogy of all time. This is the best ending to a trilogy I've ever read. It was so good. Oh my god. It was exceptional. There is a non-binary character in this book that is phenomenal. Their name is Jericho. They go by all pronouns, and it's amazing. And I just absolutely adored every second. Ian and I read this series together, and it made it that much more enjoyable to be able to talk about it. Holy shit. It was so good. But yeah, reading it with Ian made it that much more enjoyable, but also this book was absolutely phenomenal. I can't say anything because it's the third and final book in a trilogy, and I would spoil the first two books, but I highly recommend the Arc of a Scythe trilogy. It is so exceptional and masterfully written, and I really liked it. I guess it's being adapted into a movie. I truly can't even begin to describe how great this book was and how it made me cry so many times. Chapter 46, that shit hit different. It was so great. It was beautiful and wonderful, and I love the Thunderhead. Continuously one of my favorite characters, the best AI character ever. Just so good. And look how good we look together. I can't believe the series is over. I can't fucking believe it. What am I gonna do with myself now that I don't have another Scythe book to wait for? Guess I'll die. It's time. The moment we've all been waiting for. My #1 top book of 2020 came in clutch at the last week of the year. The recommendation by a bookseller that I love and admire and respect. TJ, shout out for that recommendation. I don't have it here physically with me because I'm going to lend it to literally every person that I can, because I want every human being to read this book. I will not shut up about this book ever again. You will forever hear me talk about this book. I'm really sorry about it. And it is The Book of X by Sarah Rose Etter. Here's the cover. It is an independently published book through $2 Radio, my favorite local indie publisher in Columbus. It's exceptional. It is a book about our main character Cassandra, who was born with her stomach tied in a knot, and it's this surrealist fiction book about her life and how she goes through life being a knotted woman. She's the third generation in her family to have born with her stomach in a knot, like her mother and her grandmother before her. It tackles gender roles and stereotypes and body image and love and sex and self-love, and like how the female body is interpreted and taken in by men and the media. And it's about abusive family units and relationships, and it's so fucking good. Oh my god, it is the best book I've ever read. It's one of my favorite books of all time. It is catapulted itself to the top of the list of my favorite books of all time. It's exceptional. I was crying by page like 20. It's wonderful. It's phenomenal. It's everything I've ever wanted in a book. It's fucking weird and zany and sad and hopeful. It's hopeful and it's amazing, and it's just so good. I like finished it and I just bawled my eyes out, and I was like, I looked at it and I was like, if I don't put it away, I will just start it from square one and read it again. And I'm probably gonna reread it again this year. I read it in a day. It was the best. It was so good. Please read the Book of X by Sarah Rose Etter. If you ever want a recommendation, I will always recommend that book. It's perfect. It's wonderful. I very seldom say that a book is perfect, but this one is damn close to it, if not absolutely perfect. It's brilliant. It's exceptional. It's so close to my heart, and I love it, and my cheeks hurt from smiling so much. There you have it. Those are my favorite books of 2020. I can't wait to find more favorite books as going into 2021. Let me know what some of your favorite books of the year were in the comments. Give this video a like if you feel so inclined, and if you want to see more of my content and more of my mug, you are more than welcome to subscribe. I upload when I fucking can. Yeah, and like I said, my name is Morgan. This is MorgyyReads. I hope you have a phenomenal rest of your day. I hope 2021 is beautiful and kind and warm for all of us. And with that, I'm gonna say happy reading. Okay, bye.